Ladies and gentlemen, imagine this. You're sitting at a cafe sipping your coffee when a friend calls. They need a favor. Again. Without hesitation, you say yes, even though it means canceling your plans, skipping your workout, and adding another layer of stress to your already packed day. Sound familiar? Here's the hard truth. Being kind to everyone often means being unkind to yourself. Today we're flipping the script. What if I told you that the key to taking control of your life isn't about being kinder to others, it's about being kinder to yourself? This isn't about abandoning compassion or turning your back on the people you care about. It's about redefining what kindness really means. It's about setting boundaries, honoring your needs, and reclaiming your time, energy, and peace of mind. Because here's the thing, you can't pour from an empty cup. If you're constantly giving to everyone else, what's left for you? It's time to stop being kind to everyone at the expense of yourself. It's time to take control of your life. Let's dive in. When we talk about kindness, there's often an unspoken assumption. Kindness means putting others before ourselves, sometimes to the point of neglecting our own needs and desires. This idea has been ingrained in us from a young age, lessons about sharing, helping others, and maintaining peace in relationships. While there's undeniable value in empathy and compassion, kindness is often misunderstood as going out of our way to ensure others are comfortable, even at our own expense. This perception can lead us to sacrifice our boundaries, suppress our authentic selves, and sometimes lose sight of who we are entirely. So, what if kindness could be something different? What if it could align more closely with self-respect, boundaries, and personal integrity? Self-respect isn't just about saying no when something doesn't feel right. It's about deeply understanding and appreciating our own worth, recognizing that we deserve the same respect we so willingly give to others. When we prioritize self-respect, we begin to see kindness in a new light. Instead of being solely outwardly focused, kindness becomes a value we turn inward. It means treating ourselves with the same consideration, compassion, and fairness we extend to others. We realize that our needs and boundaries are just as valid as anyone else's, and respecting them isn't selfish. It's essential for maintaining a healthy relationship with ourselves. Personal boundaries are a key part of this redefined kindness. Boundaries are the invisible lines that protect our emotional, mental, and physical well-being. When we set boundaries, we create a safe space for ourselves where we can express who we truly are, free from the pressure to conform or please others. Boundaries allow us to show up in the world as our authentic selves, not as versions molded by the expectations and demands of others. Setting boundaries isn't about shutting people out. It's about letting them know what we can and cannot accept. This is an act of kindness to ourselves because it preserves our energy, maintains our sense of self, and ultimately allows us to give more meaningfully when we choose to do so. Setting boundaries can be challenging, especially when we've been conditioned to believe that kindness means being agreeable or easygoing. We might worry that setting boundaries will make us seem selfish or unkind, or that it will create conflict in our relationships. But true kindness doesn't mean avoiding discomfort at all costs. It means being honest and upfront about our needs, even if that honesty leads to difficult conversations. In fact, it's often more respectful to both ourselves and others to be clear and assertive rather than saying yes when we don't mean it or going along with things that don't feel right. When we hold back our truth out of a misguided sense of kindness, we're not actually serving others. We're creating a facade that can lead to resentment, exhaustion, or even burnout. When we commit to this redefined form of kindness, we also take on a new level of responsibility in our relationships. It's a responsibility to be clear about who we are and what we stand for. This clarity allows those around us to understand us better, fostering deeper connections based on mutual respect. People come to know our limits and in turn have the opportunity to respect them. In this way, boundaries actually enhance our relationships. They allow us to connect with others from a place of wholeness rather than from a place of depletion or sacrifice. We can engage with others without losing ourselves in the process. Respecting our boundaries also helps us develop a deeper sense of inner peace. When we constantly put others' needs above our own, we often end up feeling frustrated, used, or taken for granted. But when we start honoring our own limits, we create a foundation of self-trust. We know we can rely on ourselves to protect our well-being, and that we won't allow ourselves to be pushed past our comfort zones for the sake of others. This self-trust is empowering. It allows us to face challenges and navigate relationships with confidence, knowing we are in control of our own lives. Beyond strengthening relationships and inner peace, redefining kindness as self-respect and boundaries can have a profound impact on our personal growth. When we stop bending over backward to please others, we free up mental and emotional space to focus on our goals, dreams, and passions. We can invest in activities that genuinely fulfill us rather than those that drain us. By committing to our own growth, we give ourselves permission to evolve and become the best version of ourselves without guilt or self-indulgence. And as we grow, we naturally become more capable of helping others from a place of abundance rather than depletion. This kind of kindness isn't about abandoning compassion for others. It's about realizing that compassion must include ourselves. When we're clear about our boundaries, we actually have more capacity to show up for others in a meaningful way. We're no longer giving from a place of obligation or resentment, but from a place of genuine care. And others can sense this difference. They recognize that when we choose to be there for them, it's because we truly want to be, not because we feel pressured to do so. This redefined kindness, rooted in self-respect and boundaries, creates a ripple effect. It encourages others to respect themselves as well, to set their own boundaries, and to engage in relationships from a place of wholeness. In the end, kindness isn't about losing ourselves to please others. It's about honoring ourselves so we can truly connect with the world around us. People-pleasing is a behavior many of us are familiar with, whether we realize it or not. It's the tendency to prioritize the comfort, expectations, or desires of others over our own, often at the expense of our personal well-being and authenticity. From a young age, many of us learned that being good or kind means accommodating others, going along with what they want, and avoiding actions or statements that might cause discomfort or conflict. While this might seem harmless or even positive, people-pleasing can lead to a life of constant self-compromise, eroding our sense of identity and personal power. The irony is that in trying to make everyone else happy, we often end up feeling disconnected, resentful, or even lost. One of the biggest challenges with people-pleasing is that it becomes a deeply ingrained habit. It's not just about saying yes to others' requests. It's a mindset that shapes how we interact with the world. When we're in people-pleasing mode, we're constantly scanning for what others might want or expect, even if they haven't explicitly said it. We anticipate their needs and adjust our words, actions, and even our personalities to fit the image we believe will make them comfortable. This can lead us to hide parts of ourselves, avoid expressing our true opinions, or make choices that don't align with our values. Over time, these small sacrifices accumulate, and we begin to lose touch with who we are, all for the sake of trying to be liked or accepted by others. Breaking free from people-pleasing starts with realizing that our worth is not dependent on how much we accommodate others. Too often, people-pleasing stems from a deep-seated belief that we must earn approval to be valued. We might feel that saying no or asserting our own needs will make us appear selfish or unkind, but real kindness isn't about self-sacrifice to the point of self-neglect. Real kindness honors both others and ourselves. It means valuing our own needs and desires as much as we value those of the people around us. When we recognize our worth, independent of others' opinions, we no longer feel compelled to bend ourselves to fit every situation. We become grounded in who we are, understanding that our value is intrinsic, not conditional. Breaking the habit of people-pleasing also requires us to embrace discomfort. Often we people-please because we fear conflict or disapproval. We worry that if we don't go along with others, we'll create tension or hurt feelings. But discomfort is a natural part of any authentic relationship. When we're honest about our boundaries and needs, it may cause temporary discomfort, but it leads to deeper, more genuine connections. In the long run, we give others the opportunity to see us as we truly are rather than the version we think they want to see. Yes, Some people may not respond well to this shift, especially if they're accustomed to us always saying yes, but those who truly value us will appreciate our honesty, and our relationships will become stronger and more balanced. Another important aspect of breaking free from people-pleasing is learning to communicate our needs openly and confidently. For many people-pleasers, the idea of saying no can feel daunting, even terrifying. But expressing our needs isn't a selfish act. It's a necessary part of maintaining our mental and emotional health. When we say yes out of obligation or fear, we're not truly present or engaged. We're simply going through the motions, often feeling resentment or exhaustion. By saying no when we need to, we create space to say yes to the things that genuinely matter to us. We're able to invest our time and energy in ways that feel fulfilling and aligned with our values. This shift can be incredibly liberating as we begin to realize that we have the power to shape our lives according to our own priorities, rather than being at the mercy of others' expectations. Learning to let go of people-pleasing also involves releasing the need for constant validation. When we're in people-pleasing mode, we often seek approval or praise as a way to feel good about ourselves. But this external validation is fleeting and unreliable. One moment we might receive praise and feel on top of the world. The next, we might face criticism and feel devastated. Relying on others for our sense of self-worth keeps us in a state of emotional dependency, constantly seeking the next hit of approval to feel validated. Instead, we need to cultivate a sense of self-worth that comes from within. This means recognizing our own accomplishments, celebrating our strengths, and accepting ourselves fully, flaws and all. When we build this internal foundation, we're less affected by others' opinions, and we're able to stand strong in our own sense of worth. As we work to break free from people-pleasing, it's also essential to give ourselves grace and patience. People-pleasing is often a deeply ingrained behavior, one that we may have been practicing for years, even decades. Changing this pattern won't happen overnight, and there will likely be moments when we slip back into old habits. But each time we assert our needs or set a boundary, we're taking a step toward reclaiming our authenticity. We're reminding ourselves that our well-being is just as important as anyone else's. And we're building a new habit, one of self-respect and empowerment. Over time, these small acts of self-assertion add up, transforming our relationships and our sense of self. The process of breaking free from people-pleasing is ultimately a journey towards self-liberation. We stop living in reaction to others' expectations and start making choices that reflect our true desires and values. We learn to be comfortable with who we are unapologetically, and we begin to attract relationships that reflect this newfound authenticity. People-pleasing may have once served us as a coping mechanism, a way to navigate relationships or seek acceptance, but as we grow, we realize that true acceptance begins within. When we accept ourselves fully, we no longer need to mold ourselves to fit the expectations of others. We're free to be exactly who we are, and in that freedom, we find a deeper sense of fulfillment and peace. Embracing discomfort is one of the most transformative steps in personal growth, yet it's also one of the hardest to take. As human beings, we're wired to seek comfort and avoid pain. It's a natural survival instinct. But in our modern world, this instinct often holds us back more than it helps us. Growth rarely happens when we're in our comfort zones. In fact, it's the moments when we step into discomfort, face challenges, and confront our fears that we find the greatest opportunities for growth and change. Embracing discomfort isn't about seeking out pain or hardship for the sake of it. Rather, it's about recognizing that the path to becoming the best version of ourselves often requires us to confront things that make us uneasy. Discomfort shows up in various ways: fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough. These are common fears that can paralyze us, keeping us stuck in patterns and behaviors that feel safe but limiting. But when we start to lean into these uncomfortable feelings instead of running from them, we gain a kind of power over them. We start to realize that discomfort isn't something to be feared, but something to be understood and even respected. Every time we face discomfort, we strengthen our resilience. We prove to ourselves that we're capable of handling challenges, and over time, these experiences build a foundation of inner strength and confidence that can't be shaken by external circumstances. One of the first steps in embracing discomfort is shifting our perspective on failure. So often we avoid taking risks because we're afraid of failing. We think that failure reflects poorly on us or that it means we're not good enough. But failure isn't the opposite of success. It's a necessary part of the journey toward it. Each time we fail, we gain valuable insights, learning what works and what doesn't, refining our approach. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable to failure, we open ourselves up to growth. We stop seeing failure as a dead end and start seeing it as a stepping stone. This shift in perspective transforms our relationship with discomfort because we no longer see it as something to avoid at all costs. Instead, we see it as a vital teacher that guides us toward our goals. Another important aspect of embracing discomfort is recognizing the power of uncertainty. Life is inherently unpredictable, yet we often strive to control every aspect of it. We plan, we organize, and we try to predict outcomes, but in doing so, we limit ourselves. When we're unwilling to step into the unknown, we miss out on countless opportunities for growth and transformation. Embracing uncertainty requires us to let go of our need for control and trust in the process. It's about surrendering to the fact that we can't always know what's going to happen next, and that's okay. When we become comfortable with uncertainty, we develop a kind of mental flexibility that allows us to adapt to change with greater ease. We become less fearful of the unknown because we understand that it holds just as much potential for good as it does for bad. We open ourselves to the surprises and unexpected gifts life has to offer, things we would have missed if we had stayed in the safety of our comfort zones. Confronting discomfort also means facing our own limitations and weaknesses. It's easy to focus on our strengths and avoid areas where we struggle, but true growth requires us to address our weaknesses, to acknowledge the parts of ourselves we might not be proud of. This can be incredibly uncomfortable because it forces us to confront our insecurities and shortcomings, but in doing so, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves. We learn where we need to put in the work and where we have room to grow. Facing our limitations isn't about self-criticism, it's about self-awareness. It's about taking an honest look at ourselves and being willing to do the work necessary to become better. Embracing discomfort also applies to our relationships. Growth in relationships often requires us to have difficult conversations, set boundaries, and express our needs and vulnerabilities. These actions can feel incredibly uncomfortable because they make us feel exposed and open to rejection. But avoiding these uncomfortable conversations ultimately keeps our relationships shallow. When we're willing to embrace discomfort in our relationships, we create the potential for deeper, more meaningful connections. We allow ourselves to be seen for who we truly are, and we give others the opportunity to do the same. Yes, there's a risk involved. Some relationships might not withstand this level of honesty, but those that do become stronger and more authentic. Embracing discomfort in relationships teaches us that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a strength that fosters true connection. Another powerful benefit of embracing discomfort is that it cultivates resilience. Each time we face a challenging situation, we develop the skills and mindset needed to handle similar challenges in the future. Discomfort becomes less intimidating because we know we have the strength to overcome it. We stop avoiding challenges and start seeking them out because we understand that each challenge is an opportunity to grow stronger. Resilience isn't something we're born with, it's something we build, one uncomfortable experience at a time. As we build resilience, we gain a kind of inner fortitude that enables us to face life's inevitable ups and downs with grace and composure. We become less reactive, less shaken by setbacks, and more confident in our ability to navigate whatever comes our way. Finally, embracing discomfort teaches us to be patient with ourselves. Growth is not a linear process. There will be setbacks, plateaus, and moments when progress feels slow or non-existent. But when we embrace discomfort, we learn to accept these moments as part of the journey. We stop expecting perfection from ourselves and start appreciating the progress we've made, however small. This patience allows us to stay committed to our goals and our growth. Even when things get tough, we learn to trust that as long as we keep moving forward, however slowly, we're on the right path. Embracing discomfort is ultimately about freeing ourselves from the limitations that fear and comfort impose on us. It's about stepping into the fullness of who we are, unafraid to face challenges, take risks, and make mistakes. It's about understanding that discomfort is not something to be avoided, but something to be embraced as a catalyst for growth, strength, and self-discovery. The journey may not be easy, but it is through discomfort that we find our true potential, and in doing so, we become the person we were always meant to be. Prioritizing authenticity over external approval is one of the most liberating choices we can make in a world that constantly tells us how we should look, act, and think. Being true to ourselves can feel like an act of rebellion. From a young age, many of us are conditioned to seek approval from others. Parents, teachers, peers, and later on colleagues in social circles. We're encouraged to conform, to fit into certain molds, and to adhere to societal norms. While fitting in can offer a sense of comfort and security, it often comes at a high cost: the sacrifice of our authenticity. When we prioritize approval from others over being true to ourselves, we slowly chip away at our own identity, values, and beliefs. We end up living lives that look good on the outside, but feel hollow on the inside. Authenticity means showing up in the world as our true selves, without the masks or personas we often put on to please others. It requires us to embrace who we are at our core, our values, passions, quirks, and imperfections. This isn't always easy because it means being vulnerable. It means exposing parts of ourselves that may not align with what others expect or want to see. But authenticity is the foundation of a fulfilling life because it allows us to build a sense of self-respect and integrity. When we live authentically, we don't feel the need to seek constant validation from others. Our sense of worth comes from within, from knowing that we are living in alignment with our true selves. Choosing authenticity also means letting go of the fear of judgment. Fear of judgment is one of the main reasons we seek external approval in the first place. We worry about what others will think of us, how they will perceive us, and whether they will accept us. This fear can lead us to censor ourselves, hiding aspects of our personality, interests, or beliefs to fit into what we believe is acceptable or admirable. But living in fear of judgment keeps us trapped in a cycle of self-betrayal. We're constantly adjusting ourselves to fit into different situations, losing touch with who we truly are in the process. When we prioritize authenticity, we accept that not everyone will understand or approve of us, and that's okay. We learn to be comfortable with the fact that we won't resonate with everyone, and that our worth is not dependent on others' acceptance. Another critical aspect of authenticity is learning to trust our own intuition and judgment. In the quest for external approval, we often defer to others' opinions, allowing them to dictate our choices and actions. We seek advice, feedback, and validation, hoping that others will give us the answers we're looking for. But no one knows us better than we know ourselves. Authenticity requires us to tune out the noise and listen to our inner voice, trusting that we have the wisdom and insight to make the best choices for ourselves. This doesn't mean we can't seek guidance or advice when needed, but ultimately we take responsibility for our decisions. When we trust ourselves, we become less reliant on others' approval because we have a strong sense of who we are and what we stand for. Living authentically also requires courage because it often means going against the grain. Society has a way of setting standards and norms that we're expected to follow, whether it's in terms of career choices, lifestyle, appearance, or beliefs. When we choose to be authentic, we may find ourselves at odds with these societal expectations. We might feel pressure to conform or to follow a path that others deem successful or respectable. But authenticity asks us to chart our own course, even if it means taking an unconventional route. This courage to stand out and pursue our own path is what sets authentic individuals apart. They're not driven by the need to fit in, they're driven by a commitment to their own truth. And while this path can be challenging, it's also incredibly rewarding because it leads to a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling. Choosing authenticity over approval also has a profound impact on our relationships. When we're not being true to ourselves, our relationships lack depth and honesty. We may find ourselves surrounded by people who only know the version of us that we presented for their acceptance. But these relationships are fragile because they're based on a facade rather than genuine connection. When we embrace authenticity, we allow ourselves to be fully seen by others. And this opens the door to deeper, more meaningful relationships because we're not hiding behind masks or pretenses. We attract people who resonate with who we truly are, rather than those who are drawn to a version of us that's curated for approval. Authenticity creates a foundation of trust and respect in relationships, allowing for genuine connection and mutual understanding. Another powerful effect of prioritizing authenticity is that it inspires others to do the same. When people see us living our truth, it gives them permission to do the same. Authenticity is contagious. It encourages others to let go of their own masks and embrace who they are. This creates a ripple effect, fostering a culture of honesty, openness, and self-acceptance. By being true to ourselves, we contribute to a world where others feel safe to do the same. We show that it's possible to live a life that's aligned with our values and passions, regardless of societal expectations or others' opinions. In this way, authenticity becomes an act of leadership and service, encouraging others to live in alignment with their own truth. Prioritizing authenticity also leads to greater personal fulfillment and satisfaction. When we're constantly seeking approval, we're never truly satisfied because external validation is fleeting and unreliable. We might feel a temporary sense of accomplishment when others praise or admire us, but it doesn't last. Authenticity, on the other hand, provides a deep sense of fulfillment that comes from within. It's the satisfaction of knowing that we're living in alignment with who we are and what we believe. This kind of fulfillment is sustainable because it's not dependent on external factors. It's rooted in our own sense of purpose and integrity, which cannot be taken away by others' opinions or judgments. Finally, living authentically allows us to fully explore and express our potential. When we're constantly seeking approval, we limit ourselves to what is deemed acceptable or admirable by others. We play small, afraid to take risks, or pursue passions that might be misunderstood. But when we prioritize authenticity, we give ourselves permission to dream big and pursue our passions without fear of judgment. We become free to explore our talents, creativity, and aspirations, knowing that our worth is not tied to others' approval. This freedom allows us to reach our full potential, tapping into abilities and passions that might have remained dormant if we were focused on pleasing others. Authenticity empowers us to live boldly and unapologetically, creating a life that feels true to who we are at our core. Setting and maintaining boundaries is one of the most essential skills for a fulfilling life, yet it's also one of the most challenging. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define what's acceptable for us, what we're willing to tolerate, and what we need to feel respected and valued. They protect our emotional well-being, our time, and our energy. However, in a world that often glorifies self-sacrifice and prioritizes the needs of others over our own, setting boundaries can feel uncomfortable or even selfish. But healthy boundaries are not selfish. They are acts of self-respect and self-care that allow us to show up in our lives as our best selves. When we set boundaries, we're making a clear statement about what we value and what we need to thrive. Establishing boundaries starts with self-awareness. We need to understand our own limits, needs, and values to set boundaries that truly support us. This requires us to spend time reflecting on what feels right for us and what doesn't. Often we might feel drained, resentful, or overwhelmed without fully understanding why. These feelings are often signs that our boundaries are being violated or neglected. Recognizing these signs can help us understand where we need to set or strengthen our boundaries. It's important to remember that boundaries are deeply personal. They're unique to each individual and can vary based on our experiences, personality, and goals. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to setting boundaries, so we must honor what feels right for us without comparing our boundaries to those of others. Setting boundaries also means communicating them openly and assertively. This can be one of the most challenging aspects of boundary setting because it requires us to be honest and direct with others. Many of us fear that setting boundaries will lead to conflict, disappointment, or rejection. We worry that others will view us as difficult or uncooperative. But effective communication is the key to maintaining healthy boundaries without damaging relationships. When we communicate our boundaries clearly, we help others understand our needs and expectations, making it easier for them to respect our limits. It's important to communicate boundaries in a way that's respectful but firm, making it clear that we're serious about maintaining them. One of the biggest misconceptions about boundaries is that they're about controlling others. In reality, boundaries are about taking responsibility for ourselves. We cannot control how others behave, but we can control how we respond and what we're willing to accept. Setting a boundary doesn't mean we're forcing someone else to change. It means we're deciding what we will or won't tolerate. For example, if someone constantly interrupts us or disregards our time, setting a boundary might mean letting them know that we expect our time and opinions to be respected. If they continue to cross that line, we may choose to limit our interactions with them. Boundaries empower us by reminding us that we have choices and that we're not obligated to accept behavior that disrespects us. Maintaining boundaries is just as important as setting them. Boundaries are not a one-time act. They require consistent effort and reinforcement. People may test our boundaries, either intentionally or unintentionally, and we need to be prepared to stand firm. This can be challenging because it often involves reinforcing our boundaries in situations where we feel pressured to compromise. But each time we honor our boundaries, we strengthen our sense of self-respect and resilience. Maintaining boundaries is a skill that requires practice and patience, and it's normal to struggle with it at times. But as we become more comfortable asserting our boundaries, we find it easier to protect our energy, time, and well-being. Boundaries are especially important in relationships, whether they're personal or professional. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, and boundaries play a vital role in creating that respect. In relationships where boundaries are unclear or non-existent, resentment and conflict often arise. Without boundaries, we may feel taken for granted or disrespected, and our relationships can become imbalanced. When we set boundaries, we create a foundation of respect, allowing both parties to feel valued and heard. Boundaries don't push people away. They help us build stronger, healthier connections based on mutual understanding. They allow us to give and receive in relationships without feeling depleted or overwhelmed. Another essential aspect of boundaries is understanding that they're flexible and can change over time. As we grow and evolve, our needs, priorities, and values may shift, and our boundaries need to reflect those changes. What may have been acceptable to us in the past may no longer feel right, and it's important to adjust our boundaries accordingly. Being flexible with our boundaries doesn't mean we're abandoning them. It means we're allowing them to adapt to our current needs and circumstances. This flexibility is especially important in long-term relationships or professional settings where dynamics may change over time. By regularly reassessing our boundaries, we ensure that they continue to serve us and support our well-being. Setting boundaries is also about creating space for self-care. When we don't set boundaries, we often end up overcommitted, feeling drained, and neglecting our own needs. Boundaries allow us to protect the time and energy we need to care for ourselves, whether that means prioritizing rest, spending time with loved ones, or pursuing our passions. Self-care is not a luxury, it's a necessity for our mental, emotional, and physical health. When we prioritize self-care through boundary setting, we're better equipped to show up fully in our lives and relationships. We're able to give from a place of abundance rather than depletion, allowing us to contribute more meaningfully to the people and activities we care about. Another important benefit of boundaries is that they help us cultivate self-respect and confidence. Each time we set and maintain a boundary, we're affirming our own worth. We're reminding ourselves that our needs and values matter and that we deserve to be treated with respect. This self-respect translates into greater confidence because we know we have the power to protect ourselves and advocate for what we need. When we respect ourselves, we're less likely to tolerate behavior that undermines our well-being, and we're more likely to attract relationships and opportunities that align with our values. Boundaries are a form of self-empowerment that allow us to stand tall and live in alignment with who we are. Setting boundaries also requires us to manage guilt and overcome people-pleasing tendencies. Many of us struggle with guilt when we set boundaries, fearing that we're letting others down or coming across as selfish. But boundaries are not about denying others. They're about honoring ourselves. It's okay to prioritize our own needs and well-being without feeling guilty. When we let go of guilt, we free ourselves from the pressure to constantly please others, allowing us to make choices that are aligned with our values. This shift is liberating because it reminds us that we're responsible for our own happiness, not the happiness of others. Boundaries allow us to support others from a place of choice rather than obligation. Setting and maintaining boundaries is an act of self-love. It's a way of saying, I value myself enough to protect my well-being. Boundaries create a safe space where we can grow, thrive, and pursue our goals without being weighed down by the expectations or demands of others. They allow us to focus on what truly matters to us rather than constantly reacting to external pressures. Boundaries remind us that we have a right to live life on our own terms, and they give us the freedom to create a life that feels authentic, balanced, and fulfilling. Embracing the power of self-acceptance is one of the most profound and life-altering choices we can make. In a world that constantly emphasizes improvement, achievement, and transformation, self-acceptance is often overlooked or mistaken as complacency. But self-acceptance is not about resigning ourselves to who we are today without the desire for growth. Rather, it's about learning to fully accept ourselves as we are in each moment. It means recognizing our own worth, flaws, strengths, and limitations, and embracing them without judgment. One of the first steps towards self-acceptance is recognizing that we are more than our achievements, failures, and roles. Society places tremendous value on what we do, what we accomplish, and how we present ourselves to the world. We're often measured by external standards and conditioned to believe that our worth is directly tied to our performance or the opinions of others. But self-acceptance requires us to step back from these external definitions and remember that our value is intrinsic. Our worth doesn't depend on how much we achieve, how we look, or how others perceive us. It's a fundamental part of who we are. When we begin to internalize this truth, we free ourselves from the relentless need to prove ourselves, and we can begin to accept ourselves simply for being. Another critical aspect of self-acceptance is letting go of perfectionism. Many of us hold ourselves to impossibly high standards, believing that we must be flawless to be worthy of love and respect. We constantly strive to meet these standards, and when we fall short, we're quick to judge ourselves harshly. But perfection is an illusion. No one is without flaws. And striving for perfection only sets us up for disappointment and self-criticism. Self-acceptance invites us to let go of this need for perfection and to embrace our humanity. Instead, it reminds us that we are allowed to make mistakes, to have weaknesses, and to experience failure. In fact, these imperfections are what make us unique and relatable.